If your life feels stuck at 99% right now, it's not because you're late, it's because your timing is being handled with precision. There is a moment when your whole life feels like a loading bar stuck at 99%. The dream is close enough to taste, almost real, almost yours. And then, everything freezes. Applications stay under review for months. People say, "Let me get back to you," and never do. You watch other people board trains you prayed for, while your platform stays painfully still. You wonder if heaven lost your file, if God put you on mute, if you missed your moment, and now you are doomed to live almost there. But what if your delays are not proof that you are forgotten, but evidence that you are being timed on purpose with a precision you cannot yet see? Intentionally. This message is for the ones who feel stuck in the hallway between where you are and where you thought you would be by now. For the souls who did everything they were told to do, followed the steps, checked the boxes, and somehow still ended up in a waiting room that never seems to call their name. You watch classmates, co-workers, and friends move into new seasons with announcements and celebrations, while your life feels like it is moving through thick syrup, slow and strangely delayed. Maybe you thought you would be further along in your career, but doors keep closing for reasons that do not make sense. Maybe you assumed you would have found your people by now, the relationships and community that feel like home. But instead, you keep experiencing almost connections that fade just when you start to trust them. Maybe you were certain that by this age you would have clarity about your calling, yet your path looks more like a maze than a straight line, full of detours you never planned. If you are honest, the delay has started to feel personal. You do not just feel late, you feel left behind. There are days when your faith and your frustration share the same room inside your chest. One part of you says, "Trust the timing," while another part whispers, "Maybe there is no timing. Maybe this is it." You scroll past motivational quotes about patience, but they land on your heart like empty slogans because the ache is real and the questions are heavy. This message matters because delay is one of the most misunderstood seasons of a chosen life. We often assume that if something is taking too long, it must be wrong. We confuse silence with absence, slowness with rejection, red lights with permanent walls. Yet, throughout history, the most significant journeys were almost always marked by long, confusing pauses. Years in deserts, decades in obscurity, silent chapters where it looked like nothing was happening on the surface. What if your delays are not wasted time, but sacred time? What if there is a hidden architecture being built underneath the surface of your story while you stand there, tapping your foot and checking the clock? What if the same God who aligned the rotation of planets and the timing of tides is not accidentally late in your life, but intentionally precise? This message is here to help you see that your delays may be carrying a purpose too deep to be visible at first glance. Because when you only measure your life by speed, you will judge slow chapters as failure. But when you start to measure by depth, you may discover that the seasons you resented most were the very seasons that gave you roots. And roots, not rush, are what keep a life from collapsing when calling finally arrives. Picture a person whose life always seems to arrive 5 minutes after everyone else's. As a child, they were the last to be picked up after school, staying on the steps while the building emptied and the sun slid lower in the sky. As they grew older, that feeling stayed, even when the details changed. Opportunities seemed to come late, or not at all. They tried to laugh it off, calling themselves a late bloomer. But there were nights when the joke stopped being funny. Even their closest relationships seemed to arrive late, then slip away just as hope surfaced. When they finished their studies, they watched classmates announce job offers and promotions, while their own applications disappeared into silent inboxes. They crafted careful emails, rehearsed interviews, prayed in the bathroom stall before phone calls, and still heard the same sentences. "We like you, but the timing isn't right." Or, "We'll keep your resume on file." Each delay felt like a tiny crack in their confidence, and those cracks began to add up. It was not just about money or status anymore. It was about the creeping belief that maybe their life was off schedule for good. Faith did not erase the tension. It intensified it. They believed in a God who opens doors, but all they could see were doors that took forever to move or stayed shut with no explanation. They listened to stories of sudden breakthroughs, overnight miracles, and instant answers. They were happy for others, but secretly, uncertainty gnawed at them. They started asking questions that felt dangerous, like, is God ignoring me? Or, did I mishear him completely? Their prayers shifted from bold declarations to quiet, tired whispers that ended more often in silence than in certainty. Days turned into months, and months slid toward years. They picked up temporary jobs that felt beneath their potential, just to pay rent. They learned how to make do with little, how to stretch meals, how to show up even when their heart was elsewhere. On New Year's Eve, while others shouted resolutions over loud music, they stood on a balcony alone, watching fireworks and wondering how many more years would start with the same unanswered questions. The slowness felt suffocating, yet inside that suffocating slowness, small but significant things were happening. In places no one saw, they were learning skills they had not planned to learn, simply because they needed to survive. Customer service taught them how to stay kind under pressure. Quiet administrative work taught them organization and attention to detail. Being the reliable friend for others in crisis taught them how to hold space for pain without running away. None of it looked like destiny. All of it looked like delay. But these threads were being woven into something they did not yet understand. One evening, after another job opportunity stalled again with the words, "We're going to push this back a few months," they found themselves walking home slower than usual. The streets were glossy with recent rain, reflecting blurry neon signs and traffic lights. They stopped at a crosswalk where the signal stubbornly stayed red, even though no cars were passing. For a moment, frustration rose like a wave. "I'm standing here waiting for nothing," they thought. "This is my whole life. Red lights and empty roads." In that stillness, another thought slipped quietly through the frustration. What if the red light is more about alignment than punishment? They glanced down the intersecting street and noticed something for the first time. If they had crossed earlier, they would have missed the person, now walking toward the same corner, someone they had been trying to meet for weeks. As the light finally turned green, they crossed paths at the center, conversations unfolding that would open doors later, doors that none of their frantic rushing could have forced. It was not a movie moment. There was no swelling soundtrack, but it lodged in their mind like a seed. How many other unnecessary delays had actually been precise intersections they could not see at the time? How many long waits had kept them from stepping into situations that would have quietly eroded who they were becoming? How many seasons that felt like cruel pauses were actually hidden classrooms where their character was being formed for something weightier than they were asking for? They did not suddenly become patient. They were still human, still tired of explaining why their life did not fit the timeline people expected. But slowly, gently, the story in their minds started to shift from, "I am cursed with bad timing," to, "Maybe I am being prepared for a timing I do not control, but might someday be grateful for." The delays did not hurt less, but they began to hurt with meaning instead of meaninglessness. To understand the hidden purpose behind your delays, you have to step back from the clock on your wall and look at your life more like a map than a stopwatch. A stopwatch only asks, "How fast?" A map asks, "Where is this leading?" Many of us are trained to obsess over speed, to measure our worth by how quickly we hit certain milestones. But purpose is rarely served by hurry. It is served by alignment, by being in the right place at the right time with the right heart. Think about a symphony. If one section of the orchestra begins too early, even with perfect technique, the entire piece is thrown off. The problem is not their talent, it is their timing. In the same way, there are things you are called to step into that require not just your readiness, but the readiness of people, places, and circumstances around you. Sometimes your delay is not about you being unprepared, but about the stage around you still being built. There are delays that protect you. The job that did not call back, the move that never happened, the relationship that stalled and died. Some of those were not missed chances. They were mercy. You may not see it yet, but had certain doors opened when you begged for them. They would have locked you into rooms that were too small for who you were becoming. Or worse, they would have quietly pulled you away from the very path your soul needed. Delay, in that sense, is a fence hidden in fog, keeping you from walking off a cliff you do not know is there. There are delays that prepare you, not in a vague, abstract way, but in very specific ways that you may only recognize years later. The so-called wasted season, where you worked a job that did not match your dream, taught you resilience, people skills, or humility that your dream will one day demand. The years you spent without the platform you wanted forced you to purify your motives and do the work for the sake of the work itself. Preparation is rarely glamorous. It looks like repetition, obscurity, and doing the right thing while no one is clapping. There are also delays that reposition you, like a train being quietly rerouted onto a new track in the middle of the night. Your life may have been shifted through closed doors and changed plans in ways that only make sense in hindsight. What feels like being stuck in place might actually be you being moved into alignment with people you have not met yet, opportunities that do not exist yet, and problems you are uniquely designed to help solve when the time comes. The problem is that when you are living inside the delay, it hardly ever feels sacred. It feels like sitting in a waiting room with outdated magazines and a flickering fluorescent light, wondering if the receptionist forgot your name. It feels like praying the same prayer for the 100th time and feeling foolish for asking again. It feels like watching the social media highlight reels of people who seem to be living the life you ordered while your package remains delayed with no tracking update. But something important happens when you stop seeing delay as an insult and start treating it as an invitation. An invitation to ask deeper questions than, when will this end? Questions like, who am I becoming while I wait? What small, faithful things can I do today that my future self will thank me for? How can I show up fully in the life I have, instead of only tolerating it while I wait for the life I want? Slowly, your waiting starts to feel like shaping instead of simple punishment. When you lean into those questions, your delay becomes a classroom instead of a prison. You begin to notice ways in which your patience is stretching, your empathy is deepening, and your dependence on control is being gently challenged. You learn to do things slowly, with care. You learn to listen more than you speak. You learn to build a life that can withstand disappointment without collapsing into bitterness every time something takes longer than expected. Purpose does not erase delay. Purpose gives delay a backbone. It does not make the wait easy, but it keeps the wait from being empty. When you start to believe that there is a hidden architecture under your slow seasons, you stop despising them quite as much. You may still long for movement, for answers, for open doors, but now, tucked inside that longing, there is also a quiet trust that if it is taking this long, there must be more being set up than you can currently see. There came a day when the delays finally made sense, not all at once, not in a cinematic flash of revelation, but in a series of quiet realizations that clicked into place like puzzle pieces. It started with a headline. The company that had once seemed like their dream workplace, the one that had strung them along for months before saying no, was suddenly in the news for a major scandal and mass layoffs. People were losing jobs, reputations were crashing, and the building they used to walk past with longing now looked like a sinking ship. They sat at their small kitchen table, phone in hand, reading the article with a strange mix of shock and relief. A memory surfaced of the night they cried over that rejection, convinced that God had ignored their prayers. Now, years later, the same no looked like protection in disguise. The delay that once felt cruel had quietly rerouted their life away from a storm they never saw coming. Their chest tightened, this time not from anxiety, but from a sober kind of gratitude. In another moment, they found themselves talking to someone who was drowning in the very kind of waiting season they had once hated. This person was exhausted by unanswered applications, delayed results, and silent phones. As they listened, it felt like listening to an echo of their own past prayers. They did not offer shallow comfort. Instead, they shared honestly about the nights they had yelled at the ceiling, the mornings they had dragged themselves to jobs that felt too small, the jealousy they had battled when others moved ahead. But as they spoke, something inside them shifted. They heard their own story through new ears, and realized how far they had come. The skills, the resilience, the empathy, the discernment, they had not arrived in a single moment. They had been carved into them by years of slow, unwanted delays. The person sitting across from them wiped their eyes and said, "I don't feel as crazy anymore. Hearing you makes me believe I might actually be okay." In that sentence, they heard the quiet confirmation of a purpose their delays had been preparing them for. Later that night, they stood by the window, city lights blinking in the distance like a slow heartbeat. They whispered a simple, trembling prayer. "If the timing of my life has been this carefully guarded, maybe I can stop calling it failure. Maybe I can stop apologizing for not being where everyone thinks I should be." For the first time, the word delayed did not feel like an insult. It felt like a strategy. Not their strategy, but something wiser, deeper, and far more loving than anything they could have scripted on their own. They still had questions, but those questions now lived inside a growing trust instead of panic. The delay felt different now. So what does all of this mean for you? Standing in the middle of your own delays, feeling like life has you on hold. It means that the slowness you hate may be holding more meaning than you realize. It means that you are not weak for growing impatient, not faithless for feeling frustrated, not broken for wondering why everyone else seems to move faster. It means your story is not over just because it is not moving at the speed you expected. You are allowed to grieve the time you feel you have lost. You are allowed to admit that waiting has bruised your hope, that you are tired of explaining why certain things have not happened yet. Honesty is not the enemy of faith. Pretending is. Bring the real disappointment, the real confusion, the real anger to God. Instead of dressing it up with polite phrases, He can work with the truth. He cannot transform the parts of you that you insist on hiding. At the same time, you are invited to shift the way you interpret your delays. Instead of only asking, "Why is this taking so long?" you can begin to ask, "What is being built in me while I wait? Who might need the version of me that emerges from this? What if the timing I am fighting against is actually the timing that will protect me, position me, and prepare me for things I cannot yet see?" These questions will not shorten the wait, but they will deepen the way you live inside it. You are still allowed to move, to create, to learn, and to love while things are unresolved. Waiting does not mean standing perfectly still. It means walking faithfully with questions you cannot yet answer, trusting that clarity often comes after obedience, not before it. One day, you will likely look back on this season and see things you cannot see right now. You will trace the path of your life and notice how certain late moments were precisely on time, how certain missed chances were mercies, how certain painful pauses were actually the cradle of the person you became. And when that day comes, you may find yourself saying, with a softness you did not have before, "I would not have chosen these delays, but I can see now that they were not empty." Until then, you walk forward one honest, faithful step at a time. You keep doing the next right thing, even when no one is watching. You keep bringing your weary heart to God and letting Him sit with you in the waiting room. Your delays do not disqualify you. They are part of your becoming. The hidden purpose behind your delays is not to break you, but to align you so that when your moment finally arrives, you will be ready in ways you cannot yet imagine.